You're listening to the ESO Network, your station for all things geek.
Hi, I'm Joe Heath.
I'm Toni Heath.
And this is the Watch-A-Thon of Rassilon.
A podcast
that you're listening to with your ears.
Congrats!
Toni and Joe, you are ordered to walk every doctor who serialized discuss them all.
Today we're going to be talking about the third serial of the 25th season of Doctor Who, Silver Nemesis, which consists of 3 episodes that aired from November 23rd, 1988 to December 7th, 1988.
True facts!
And I want to give a special shout out to Bisexual Brigadier for sponsoring this episode.
Hey, thanks, Bisexual Brigadier.
You can check them out at bisexualbrigadier.tumblr.com. Before I introduce our guest, I want to make a quick note. If you hear a cat meowing, I'm sorry, we have a new cat and she's not been fixed and she's in heat. Just letting you know that up top. And I don't want to have to keep pausing the recording every 5 minutes when she's meowing. It's an adorable little chirp.
Is it?
I mean,
it's really more of a whine.
It's
a constant whine.
It's adorable when you don't hear it for 3 days in a row. But now that little announcement's out of the way, let's introduce our guests. Returning guests, we have Mike Gordon.
Howdy!
How you been doing?
I am pleased to report that I am not currently in heat.
I'm very thankful for that. I just one per podcast episode.
Exactly. No, you have my sympathies because I have experienced that and it can be quite tiresome. You have my sympathies.
Thank you. Other than not being in heat, how are you doing? Anything interesting lately?
Things have been great. As always, I appreciate the invite. It seems like it's been way too long of a time, so I miss you guys.
Aww.
This is great because we have not yet done Silver Nemesis on Earth Station Who, so this was a first-time viewing for me, so I was quite excited. So,
oh, awesome. I'm excited that you're going into it, I guess, kind of blind like we are. So
absolutely.
But we also have another guest with us today. We have Ashley Rayburn. Welcome back.
Oh, I'm glad to be back. I'm excited to talk about this story specifically. This is one of my favorites and one that I am excited to talk about, which I guess I just said twice. So
that's how excited he is.
It is.
You're the old pro at this one. You're the one who's seen it before.
Yeah, apparently, yeah.
So how you been outside of Doctor Who?
I have been good. I'm started a doctoral program, so I'm trying to learn a little more about stuff. Beyond that, I'm not doing a ton. Not these days. Not as much as I used to.
So wait, you're going to be a doctor?
That's the idea.
Awesome. A doctor talking about Doctor Who sounds really cool.
Yeah. In about 4.5 years, maybe I can make that happen.
Nice. What are you doing your, I guess, doctorate in or whatever?
Learning and leadership. It's an education degree at University of Tennessee in Chattanooga. So I'm excited to do that. I started last summer, and that's where my head is right now. It's reading a lot of journal articles and textbooks and doing a bunch of online discussions right now.
Awesome. Well, I believe in you. You can do it.
That's the hope. We'll see. It's not very Doctor Who exciting, but it's exciting for me. And yeah, maybe one day I will be a doctor and I'll talk about Doctor Who. That's the hope.
Let's do it. Let's talk about Doctor Who. Woo. Let's talk about Silver Nemesis. Episode 1, which I have called The Fourth Reich, because that's who's in this.
You're right.
I would also say Painfort? ?
Nice. There's definitely an abundance of villains to choose from in this one. We start off in present day 88 in South America, where we see some, Nazis that are doing some computer stuff. And they see that something's going to land, I guess, at Windsor Castle. This guy who's doing stuff on the computer goes to tell the head Nazi, who his name is De Flores, I think is his name, who he interrupts him from shooting a parrot with an arrow. That's real rude. I know he's a Nazi, but that's like really rude.
Jesus.
I thought you meant it was rude that he was interrupted.
It's rude no matter what angle you look at it from.
Yeah, those Nazis just hate everything. I have to say, too, that this is interesting because you guys were around in the 80s, right?
I was
For
born...
a whole year.
I was born 1 year after this. I was born in 89.
I was. So
Gotcha. Okay, so I'm not sure how well you were aware of this, but having lived through all of the 80s, I can tell you that it was an actual thing that there was a huge belief that there was a bunch of Nazis living in South America.
Oh.
It was, it's not a made up thing. It's just something that, I think it spawned from, there was a movie called Boys of Brazil, I think, something like that. And, there was just this sort of conspiracy kind of thinking that, there was a huge regiment of Nazis rebuilding in somewhere in South America.
And now they're just in North America.
That's right.
And to add to that, at the same time, in the late 80s and the 90s, there was also a lot of concern about neo-Nazis. If you remember, I don't know, is it still on? I don't know if it's still on. There was a news show that came on Friday nights called 2020 on ABC. And every other week, there would be a story about neo-Nazis in the military. And it would just be it was this thing in the late 80s, early 90s that when this was made, that Nazism was there was a new scare, I guess.
Yeah, I think a few years before that, the Blues Brothers have them as one of the bad guys in that.
Illinois Nazis. I hate Illinois Nazis.
Exactly. And the Illinois Nazis was a thing. My parents are both from Illinois, and I can remember the first time I watched Blues Brothers. I was watching it with my dad, and my dad turned to me and he's like, "That's real." And I was like, wow, okay.
The Blues Brothers are real. That's what he was saying.
Exactly, yeah.
But that's our first set of villains introduced and is in present day. And then we go back to 1638, where
I genuinely forgot that there were Nazis in this.
That's
The
fair.
serial has a lot going on.
I think out of the plethora of villains in this serial, they're probably the weakest.
It's just some Nazis.
Yeah, it's just some Nazis. They're good enough story-wise, I guess. But the other villains, I feel are more interesting.
Sure.
Because the next group we get, they're also shooting birds. Not with their fingers. They're shooting bows and arrows. Yeah, they're shooting arrows at pigeons, I guess. But it's Lady Painfort and her servant Richard. They're paying this mathematician to do a bunch of calculations and whatnot of basically what the Nazis are calculating with a computer. They've paid a mathematician to figure out. We don't know what it is quite yet, but they also are Lady Painfort and Richard are making poison silver arrows as
Golden.
well. Golden arrows.
That's very important.
Yes. So, golden poison arrows, but they also have a silver arrow that is important. It's a special arrow. But yeah, Lady Painfort and Richard are our second set of villains, and I love them very much.
And the funny thing about that, I think she's just doing it to show how wealthy she is. I think she's just we'll just use the gold. I'm Lady Painfort.
Yeah, it's her trademark is, I think, what the doctor calls it later. That's her thing. That's her calling card. So it's not a specifically taking out, spoilers, Cyberman thing.
Spoilers for a 2-minute thing that we're probably going to mention. So.
I watched the making of this, and the writer originally wrote all of their dialogue. Lady Painfort and Richard wrote all of their dialogue in iambic pentameter because they wanted it to sound Shakespearean. When I think JNT found out, he was like, "Don't do that." and made him change it. But he said he left some of it in there, just a little bit here and there.
How dare you have these characters be semi-authentic?
There is a great Shakespeare joke later about, I don't remember the exact wording, but it is a reference to Exit pursued by a bear. There's like an animal, he doesn't know what it is, and they talk about like it may be a bear, and she's like, no, that only happens in the theater.
Like, even if it is a bear, it won't attack. That kind of thing only happens in the theater.
The Nazis have a big get-together. The De Flores Nazi tells all the other Nazis of the Fourth Reich, as they are known, that the victory is approaching, and they're going to go track down this thing, and they have a silver arrow. No, they have a silver bow. Painfort has a silver arrow, and they have a silver bow. And then we see a comet heading towards Earth with a statue inside of it with like a face. That is the titular Silver Nemesis, which this was originally just called Nemesis. And then I think JNT was like, it should be called Silver Nemesis. And also there should be Cybermen in it because it's the silver anniversary, the 25th anniversary of Doctor Who, which...
Oh!
Yeah. Yeah, this is the anniversary episode, even though Remembrance of the Daleks 100% feels more like an anniversary episode. But this one is technically the anniversary episode. I mean, this one honestly feels a lot like Remembrance of the Daleks, but with Cybermen instead of Daleks, and maybe more jokes.
There's a lot of similarities.
It's the exact same story.
It really is.
It really is. It is the silver anniversary, and there's a scene, and remind me, it has been a while. I know you guys would have watched it just a few episodes ago, but Remembrance of the Daleks took place in 1963, right?
Yeah.
So there's a scene where they're talking about 25 years, every 25 years something happens, and 1963, they're like, what happened in 1963? And they're like, Kennedy was assassinated. Wouldn't they have just been like, I don't know, the Daleks invaded London? That was pretty big, right? It just happened to us like, I don't know, a week ago?
We were literally just there, Ace. Keep up.
It is quite common in Doctor Who. No one on Earth ever remembers Daleks attacking. Ever. Right. They attack all the time, and yet every time we get a Dalek story, humans are just like, what are these things?
What's bizarre is that at the very end of this serial, Ace even references Remembrance of the Daleks. She just basically straight up says, hey, this is exactly like the thing you did with the Daleks.
Yeah, she does. She's not stupid.
But she completely forgot about what happened in 1963 when they're discussing the 25-year cycle. Speaking of the 25-year cycle, the mathematician figures stuff out and tells Lady Painfort that the meteor will land on November 23rd, 1988, which is when the present-day scenes are set. And as I was taking notes, I usually I look at a transcript. In the transcript, somebody left a note that said, is that allowing for the 11-day calendar correction in September 1752 when we changed to Gregorian?
Sure.
How does the mathematician know about this change that happens in the future? You know, it's probably give or take a week or so, you know. Or it's just a show and that guy didn't do his research, the writer. So the next scene, the Doctor and Ace are listening to the Courtney Pine Jazz Quartet.
This is so cute.
Fun fact, the writer wrote that into the script because he liked Courtney Pine and wanted to hear him do jazz.
Oh, nice. Way to use what you got.
I didn't even know this was a famous dude.
No, I'm wondering if, and I don't know, I didn't know that piece that it was written in just for that. But was it the writer or was it the script editor, Andrew Cartmel?
It was the writer.
Interesting. Andrew Cartmel is known to be like a huge vinyl guy and jazz and all of those things. So it wouldn't have surprised me if it were Andrew Cartmel.
Maybe it was just they were both like, yeah, we got to do this. Then there's a joke that I really love where they're listening to the jazz and Ace picks up a newspaper and on the cover it says like meteor headed towards Earth and she's like, have you seen this? Charleston picked up 3 points, which is a great joke.
Well, it's also funny because the Doctor's like, what is it that I'm supposed to be remembering right now?
Yeah,
and it's
exactly.
very obviously the thing right in front of him.
Yes, because he has this. He set a reminder on his watch that he has no idea what it's for. That's the worst when you have like an alarm go off and you're like, what did I set this for? I have no idea.
He doesn't say, but I like to think, too, it was like some generations ago. So that would also account for the fact that it's kind of murky as to exactly why he said it.
Yeah, there's a great joke where Ace is... Because they find out, like, Earth is going to be destroyed. That's what always happens. Ace is like, you've just forgot that you made a reminder about this? How long have you known about this? And he's like, well, depending on how you look at it... I've known since 1638.
Yeah, that's a running joke throughout the whole story, actually.
One thing that I love, and I think it comes in this season really well, is the gadgets that they give Sylvester McCoy. And I think in that way, so I saw this first run in 88. To my mind, Sylvester McCoy is very much like this gadget doctor because he's like building tape decks and he has this cool watch with all these different things and all of that. So I always love that part in this particular story.
And it is a very cool tape deck because what happens after they leave the jazz. First off, she gets her tape autographed, and they get shot at by some what are the cyber dudes called? The people that have the like cyber headphones on, but they're not Cybermen.
They had been cybertized.
Yeah,
cybertized. That's
yeah,
good.
cybertized or cyberdized or something. I mean, they're essentially Cybermen, Robomen, right? That's what Daleks, the Dalek human slaves are called. But I don't think they were given a name. They had just been, as he said, they were long dead. And I think they used the word cybertized, but I might be wrong. I might have just made that word up. I don't know.
This is my first time watching it, and I must admit that, I mean, even though I knew Cybermen were going to appear in this, I had that spoiled for me. When they were first attacked, I didn't make the automatic connection that these guys were working for the Cybermen, just because they just seemed like dudes with headphones on. Like, I just thought, okay, yeah, that just seems so unlike, Cybermen there was nothing there that I recognized that was cyber about them.
I honestly didn't put that together either, but I did think they were Robomen. I forgot that Robomen were from the Daleks and not the Cybermen. I just got them crisscrossed in my head.
I just thought they were some dudes.
And as I was watching it this time, this is the first time I really thought about some of these plot holes, because usually I just like turn my brain off because I love these so much. But I started thinking about this, and like that comes out of nowhere, just like you said. And it's one of these things that it's just like, why did the Cybermen send these guys early? There's not really indication that they know the Doctor's going to be there.
He tweeted about purchasing the jazz tickets.
I do believe that both the Cybermen and Painfort know that or expect the Doctor to be there.
Maybe that's it, yeah.
Because I think both of them are aware of the history of this thing. And as far as we know, we find out later, of course, that the Doctor's responsible for the Silver Nemesis. Now, the only ones who don't know that the Doctor is involved is the Fourth Reich.
And apparently the head Nazi, the De Flores, the guy who played him, also had no idea what was going on in the script. He just did it because he's like, I can watch Wimbledon from my hotel. That's like he said that's the only reason he took the role.
Wow.
He's like, I don't know, there's some robots and stuff. I don't know what it's about.
So one of the things that's, and it may be on the DVD. This might be what you're talking about, but one thing that's very interesting about this is that this was documented, being created by a making of documentary team from a PBS station in the U.S.
I actually haven't seen that. I want to.
Okay, it's quite good. I mean, for what it is, they go back and they do a thing. To me, those two things go together really closely. There's this PBS team that's doing their thing, and they're showing a lot of the behind-the-scene things, and they're doing these interviews with some of the actors. And if you are just a fan of Doctor Who and like kind of the stuff around Doctor Who, the producers and production assistants, things like that, you get to see all of those guys, many of whom are no longer with us. And it's the only time you really get to see some of them in action. And you get to see it, and it's all connected to this story. It's all connected to the rehearsals and the way they did the special effects for the flashing bow later in the story. All of that's shown, and it's really cool. It's really cool to see that, like I said, if you're into that, like the nonfiction side of Doctor Who, it's a really great resource for that.
I'd love to check that out. It wasn't on the DVD I had because I think it was on like an early release, maybe a VHS or something. But when they released it on DVD, they didn't have the rights for it.
Okay, it wouldn't shock me if it's available somewhere online. I don't know. It's a cool thing. I have it. I can't watch it anymore, but I have it recorded on VHS from PBS from 1988. So somewhere.
Wow.
I did recognize the actor that plays DeFlores, Anton Defring, and he is born German. He got out before the war, World War II, but made a career out of playing Nazis throughout the 40s, 50s, even up to the, 60s, 70s, or whatever. If they needed a Nazi, that was your guy. Most notably, he's in Where Eagles Dare with Clint Eastwood. And he's solid. This is his last role. His final performance, and of course he's playing a Nazi, but he would actually die from cancer in about 6 months from this. So he's 72. So yeah, the fact that he's sort of like, quote unquote, phoning it in, or whatever, he's still really good, I think. He's still menacing. And, to him, playing a Nazi is just like breathing. So, yeah, he's also, for geeks out there, he's also in the first version, I think, of Fahrenheit 451. He's really noticeable in that, too.
I've been watching all of the comic book films and TV shows in order. And I watched the serial Spy Smasher, and I think it's Spy Smasher. There's a Nazi villain, and the guy who plays him is a similar thing where he got out and just played a bunch of Nazis, but like specifically negative portrayals of Nazis. So, it's like, stick it to him. You need a German guy to play your bumbling Nazi? I'm here for you.
That's why they all left. They were not. I don't think they were. Is there I don't want to watch something that has a good portrayal of Nazis. That's not what I'm interested in. So they are the best bad guys, right? So
they get shot at by these cyber dudes. They fall in the river. Ace is very worried that her tape is going to get wet, though it seems like a thought that was thought of later because it is clearly dubbed over. She's just like, I hope my tape didn't get wet.
It would ruin the autograph.
Yeah. And they hang out on the side of the river next to the TARDIS. They establish that Ace has a slingshot, which did the people in the UK call him a catapult? Because that's what the transcript said every time she used it, is that she was using her catapult. But I don't think I've ever heard a slingshot called a catapult before. Are you Googling it?
I am.
Slingshot catapult.
It seems like there's different physics there.
Right?
I'm definitely seeing it referred to as a catapult in places.
Huh. Is it a type of slingshot specifically, or are they just like interchangeable? Yeah, it says other names include catapult, United Kingdom, bean shooter, and pachunga. Oh, I like pachunga.
I think coin shooter would be more appropriate for this story.
Yes. But she is, I don't know what she's shooting into the river. And then the Doctor says, hey, duck. And then she ducks. And he's like, no, duck. And a duck waddles out of the TARDIS.
I don't know if I've ever seen that done in that direction before.
But he does. He brings out the tape deck because hers was destroyed in remembrance of the Daleks. She's like, oh, cool, we can listen to my new tape. And he's like, no, we gotta, I've done other stuff to it.
This is here to do a science.
And that's when he pops it up and sees that the Earth is in danger, and he remembers what his reminder was for. Meanwhile, in the past, Painfort and Richard have killed the mathematician because they're going to do a ritual, and they need some human blood. So they kill the mathematician, who the guy that plays him. He's this older guy. He does a really good performance for the short amount of time he's in. I believe he was one of the people who auditioned to play the Doctor, the first Doctor.
Oh, wow.
That's another little, anniversary tie, I guess, is that this guy who was in the running to be the first Doctor is in this serial. But they kill this guy. They have some bones set up. They drink a potion, and then just lights start going all flashing, and there's colors and light, and they're in a little tornado. They wind up in present day, 1988. In a restaurant, I believe. Her house was turned into a restaurant. You hate to see it happen. Meanwhile, the Doctor and Ace TARDIS to the Windsor basement, looking for a bow, a silver bow. And there is a scene that happens that feels like a reference, but is not. It is It is the establishing the reference that will happen in the 11th Doctor era, because there is a scene where the Doctor puts on a fez and holds a mop and is doing comedic bits with it.
That was amazing. I was like, I think this is the origin of the Doctor and the fez. Now, Ace takes it over afterwards, but so she thinks, obviously, fezzes are cool as well.
And Hartnell had a Stetson first.
Yes, it's true.
And that's the history of Doctor Who and hats. You're welcome.
That's what this podcast is all about. Just letting you know about Doctor Who and hats. And Sylvester McCoy specifically is very good with a hat. He does a lot of good comic business with a hat.
I should say, I guess, maybe in the outset here that I'm not a big fan of this era of Doctor Who, but I love watching the interplay between Sylvester and Sophie. They're just so fun to watch together. Even though, like, these scenes that we're talking about, there's a lot of, like, it's weird, doesn't make sense, whatever. The whole duck thing is kind of corny, but it works for them because they're just, like, I just love the interplay.
They're very cute and very dangerous.
A very good combination, and I enjoy it so much.
It is true.
There's always, like, some delightful banter about, like, you didn't bring that Nitro 9, did you? Of course not. Well, great. Don't use it to blow those bad guys up. I won't. Wink. It's great.
And off she goes.
So while they're goofing around in the basement, the comet crashes into Earth, and then the Doctor gives Ace a bit of, like, history. He says that he's the one who sent it, and he goofed up the math, I guess, and he said, this may qualify as the worst miscalculation since life crawled out of the seas on this sad planet.
Which is a hell of a mood.
So does that mean he didn't take into account the 7 days that were, like, but the mathematician did?
Oh.
Maybe that's it. Somehow the mathematician figured out that at some point they're going to have to change this calendar.
Exactly.
So the Doctor and Ace go to 1638, find the dead mathematician and his calculations, and he gives more exposition about that the comet contains a statue made out of living metal called Validium. The statue was made by Lady Painfort, but it needs the arrow and the bow to work or whatever. It's all plot stuff. It's not thoroughly important. Who cares?
Yeah, the plot isn't why the serial is good.
Yeah, it's good because it's fun. And that she time traveled with black magic. Also, he plays a chess mat. There's like a chessboard set up and he plays chess on it. And he keeps coming back to it. And I don't know if he's playing with himself or if he's playing against someone else that we don't see.
I think you see him move both pieces.
Do you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think he's playing with, he's playing against Lady Penfort. I think so. Like, cause she's already like set it up. So her strategy is kind of obvious on the board. So that's my thinking. Cause it comes back later too.
So both the Nazis and Lady Painfort show up at the Comet, but they're both going to wait because one, too hot, can't touch. And two, there's police there. So they're just going to wait for things to calm down. And then some silver things pop up out of the ground and just emit a gas that knocks out all of the police. The Doctor and Ace go back to the present day, pop out near a tour of Windsor, where apparently a lot of the members of this tour are like Doctor Who people. I think the writer's in there. The Brigadier is in this group. You can only see his face in one shot, and it's way in the background. But it is him. The Brigadier is here. I can't remember who else was in it. I know they wanted to get Anthony Ainley, and I don't think he was available. But it just seems so weird that they got all these people. But it's like, why? You can't see them. What's the point? But
just so you could tell this tidbit at a podcast years later.
Apparently they had fun, though. So that's
nice.
That's nice. Also, Bisexual Brigadier sponsored this episode, and it's got the Brigadier in it.
Yeah.
They all were happy because they could watch Wimbledon tennis.
Though they are at Windsor, by the way, I believe this is not Windsor.
No.
Because they couldn't.
It's not
legally do that. And then they bump into the Queen, who is also not really the Queen. They were trying to get a prince. I forget his name. I'm terrible with royalty. I don't know royalty's names. But there was slight interest from him, but it didn't pan out, so they just got a Queen impersonator.
I was too American for this bit.
I sort of pieced it together. I was like, that must be royalty. My mind didn't immediately go queen, but it was like, it's definitely someone.
Do you know what's great about this scene? Because the scene is basically the doctor, like, we're going to get this person to help us. We're going to go up to them and demand help.
We're going to act like we own the place. We own the place.
It's like, that always works. And Ace is, like, freaking out. I think what's funny about this scene is that, like, if this was an alien planet, she'd be like, okay. But because it's home, she's like, that's the queen. You can't just go around doing whatever. Because, like, their rules feel more real.
That makes sense. Oh, and also he does, like, I'm going to take charge and we're going to act like we own the place. She recognizes that it's the queen and she's like, we can't do it. And he's like, she looks really familiar. And then she's like, you can't, and pulls him to the side. And then when he finds out, he's like, well, why not? She's the person who could probably help us the most. So pursues it even further. They chase down the queen, but they get stopped by, like, security or whatever. They won't let him do anything. They won't help him. And they're going to just arrest him. And to get out of it, he puts on some glasses and then kind of hypnotizes them and then runs away. And Ace is like, how did you do that? And he's like, it took some learning, but you just have to make a spectacle of yourself.
This is a good show.
And then they find a painting of Ace from the past on the wall. And she's like, and he's like, that hasn't happened yet. And that's like the only reference to it in the whole episode. I thought that might come back, but it doesn't. Just a joke. Just a painting of Ace in, like, period clothing hanging out on the wall.
Obviously, John Nathan Turner and Cartmel had plans for the Seventh Doctor and Ace. We see this, this obviously the way that this ends. There's implications there too, and they were building to something. So I do think they were trying to think ahead and put seeds in for certain storylines that they were thinking would come later.
That Big Finish would have to do.
Well, I mean, that's why they call it the Cartmel Master Plan. He did have Cartmel did have a lot of that. Some of it pans out in the New Adventure books, and some of it doesn't, unfortunately. But this episode is super important for that. Well, we'll get to in a little bit, but it's kind of the crux. This and Remembrance of the Daleks, and you see a little bit of it next season too. But these are probably the two of the most important stories for what comes in the novels, the New Adventures in the 90s. That is the Doctor Who we had in the 90s, the New Adventures. So everything builds off these two stories, really.
I'm assuming it has to do with the, like, Omega and Rassilon stuff.
Yeah, well, and I can't remember if it's come up yet, but there's
the other.
There's Rassilon, Omega, and the other, right? Omega and the other, and the indication is that the Doctor is the other.
I've heard that gets all kinds of messy and, like, expanded stuff.
Yeah, and it's never really answered. And then you get Time's Champion and all of this stuff that they play it however they play it. But all that said, is what you are watching right now with this story and with Remembrance and really this whole season, except for maybe Happiness Patrol, everything kind of is on this crux of the Doctor being something bigger than what we've ever seen him be. And at this time in the show, the people that were taking charge were the fans, really. You had Cartmel. You had, while he didn't write on the series, he takes over in the books and becomes huge. Paul Cornell. You've got all of these people, and there's a story that Terrence Dix told at Timegate several years ago. The first time he was there twice. The first time he was there, he said that Paul Cornell would always come up to him and say, "Oh, I think the Doctor's something big, something more. He's not just a Time Lord." And he's like, "Look, Paul, the Doctor is just a Time Lord from Gallifrey." Except he said it a little differently. But he was just like, "It don't make it a big thing." But all those fans wanted the Doctor to be something else, and it really begins to show through. And Aronovich's stuff with Remembrance, and then in a few stories you have Battlefield.
I was going to say Battlefield is huge.
Battlefield is probably my all-time favorite Doctor Who story. I don't remember if I signed up for that one or not, but if I didn't,
you are. I think you're on that one too. So.
I think I am. I love that story, but while it doesn't do the Time Lord stuff as much, this story is fantastic. And if I can break in just for a second, break into myself because I've already taken the microphone. So I went back when I was remembered I was on this one. I went back and there's this magazine that came out. It's called Doctor Who in Vision, and they took stories and they broke them down, and they basically talked about every aspect of production of a story from the very beginning to the very end. And at this point, they had pictures and background art. And in this particular magazine, I read this when it came out, which was probably the early 2000s. There's this story in here, and it's by Craig Hinton. And Craig Hinton is a pretty well-known author in the New Adventures stuff. The issue with Craig Hinton is he is someone who we lost too soon. He died very young, but he did a fantastic Ice Warrior story called God Engine. You guys know I'm a huge Ice Warrior fan.
What?
He was basically the like chosen one to like keep going with like Doctor Who stuff, and everyone loved his stuff. And he has a story in this particular. It's just a one-page story, and it's called Past Crimes. And it basically is this story about, and this is fiction, it's not necessarily canon, but because it was a New Adventure author, I like to think that it is at least has some credence. And it takes place, it's a conversation between the first Doctor and Lady Painfort, and in this story, she reveals that she is, or it is revealed, the Doctor knows this, she was basically an outcast from the Sisterhood of Karn, go back to Brain of Morbius, and New Who. And she was the leader of the Sisterhood, and she was outcast from that. And not only that, and this is where it gets a little crazy, she was basically Morbius's lover.
Lady Painfort?
Yeah, this is fiction. You don't have to take this as canon, but I really think, as you think about it this way, it makes a lot of sense to me. So there's this conversation going, a chess game between the first Doctor and Lady Painfort, and they're talking about the Nemesis statue and all of these things that happen. But the idea that she was outcast from the Sisterhood because she was like too wicked. As you think about it, she knows this weird time magic. She holds herself like someone who is, because the Sisterhood were outcast from Gallifrey, and then she was outcast from Karn and the Sisterhood. And basically when Morbius was, I think she was outcast to Earth in the story. She was outcast from Earth the same time that Morbius was outcast from Gallifrey. So she's that. And I always thought that made a lot of sense as you kind of put these things together and you have that idea of like the first Doctor playing chess with her and doing all of this, and then that sets up the Nemesis story that we get here. It's something that I love. When you get into that, we call it the Wilderness Years, there's some really cool stuff that comes out of that, and you've got people like Craig Hinton, and you've got Andrew Cartmel, who's still writing books after the series, and you've got Ben Aronovich and Paul Cornell. All these people are doing really cool things, and they kind of keep the legacy of this master plan going, which is super fun.
I did get the feeling that there was something else that happened, and there was a history there between the Doctor and Painfort, and I was intrigued by that too. I was wondering, like, I haven't seen every classic Who leading up to this, but I was pretty certain that the Doctor's first encounter with her and the whole Silver Nemesis thing that he put together was not something that had already been filmed. And so I was wondering if, Big Finish or somebody had taken that up, because I would imagine that it's ripe for the taking. Like, this is a story that is begging to be told, I think.
It amazes me how many of these haven't been picked up on, right? I mean,
I know. At this point, it's like everything.
There are some Nemesis stories, and maybe, but I don't think they are in the New Adventures. That's the one thing I can say, is I've read every stinking New Adventure, and thanks to the Oncoming Storm podcast. While the Gallifrey things show up, and you've got Lungburrow, which comes straight out of this with the history and all that, I don't think I can't recall the Nemesis statue coming back. But you get all the other references that are there, which we'll get to at the end of this, but it is just fantastic.
Yeah, I definitely got a sense there was a history there, and I got the sense that she was not human. I thought she might have been another Time Lord or something like that, so I definitely got that vibe. Sisterhood of Karn makes sense as well. This seems to be something that should be mined at some point.
Yeah, because she definitely, I mean, in the at the scene we were at in the recap, she does have a scene where she says she knows the Doctor and she knows his secret.
Yep.
There's a lot of that of her talking about, I know your secret. I think she says she learned it from the statue, though, but her being something else makes sense. But why would she be involved with the statue too? So
Well, on top of that, there's if you take all of that I just said out, and one thing that I never caught until I watched it this time is that she is, and the Cybermen reference it, which is weird, but she is insane, right? Like, she is going mad, as the Cybermen say. And every time you see her, she goes a little further down that rabbit hole. And I think that's intentional. Well, I wonder if it's, maybe I should say I wonder if it is intentional, that she is suffering from mental illness, because she gets a little more manic every time you see her.
Which is disappointing. It's just another one of these, like, you know, strong women, but she's mad kind of thing stories, which is, Doctor Who should be better than that. But I do think, like, the line that I think you referenced that like really intrigued me is when Richard says, like, what will you do with this statue? What will you do with the Nemesis? And she says, the first thing I'm going to do, or I'm paraphrasing, but she says, I'm going to have revenge on that predictable little man. Like, she's after the Doctor. Like, she has got her sights on him. And I'm like intrigued. I'm like, I want to know that history.
I agree. I think that's an interesting dynamic.
You know, as the story goes on, she gets a little bit less, like, cool because they go with that predictable, like, she's insane route. And that's unfortunate because she starts out with such a cool villainess.
Wow, that's wild. Because I think she's one of the greatest comedy characters the show has had so far.
Yeah, there's a scene in episode 3 when we get to it. I can't wait to talk about it because I love it so much.
Me too. Me too.
I think I know which one you're talking about, and you're right. It's fantastic.
But basically, at the end of the first episode, everybody sort of converges on the statue. The Nazis are there.
I forgot there were Nazis again.
That's a good world to live in.
How did the Nazis get to the UK?
How do they keep getting in here? Who keeps letting them back in?
And they're armed and everything. And I'm like, how did this happen? But, oh well.
That's a good question. But they show up, they put the bow on the statue kind of comes alive. The Doctor arrives, sort of explains that the statue, once it has the bow and the arrow, can control life and death on any planet or some nonsense. The Nazis threaten to shoot Ace. They think that the Doctor and Ace have the arrow, though they don't. Lady Painfort does. But luckily, Ace is saved by an arriving spaceship. And she's like, oh, cool, they've saved us. And the Doctor's like, hold up a second. And then the doors open and the Cybermen come out. That is the cliffhanger. That is the end of episode 1. Oh no, Cybermen. I knew Cybermen were in this, and I forgot by the time that happened. I was like, oh right, yeah, those guys are here. But that's the end of episode 1, and we're now into episode 2, which I have called Jam Session. That's a pun. To jam the transmission
with jazz.
Jazz.
We got it.
So immediately there's a bit of a shootout. Cybermen and the Nazis shooting at each other. Painfort joins in with her gold-tipped arrows.
It's wild to have a scene where you're like, maybe they'll all kill each other.
This is almost as cool in New Who as the Daleks meeting the Cybermen. I'm like, Nazis versus Cybermen. Okay, I never thought I'd see this. This is fun.
No matter who loses, we win.
It's like they're just killing each other, and then you've got this really cool woman just hitting them with gold arrows and taking them out, like taking the Cybermen out, and I'm like, randomly, and I'm like, this is awesome.
And while that's all happening, Richard is just praying.
And the Nazis are like, whoa. Did they just kill one of those guys with an arrow?
Exactly. Here we're using Uzis. No effect. They just killed one with an arrow.
Like, what are we doing wrong? I think we got the wrong ideology here.
So much for your master race theory.
All of the Nazis here wind up dead except for 2, right? DeFlores and his henchman, Carl. Oh, also there's an important point. One of the gold-tipped arrows, as the Doctor, he steals the bow without the Nazis knowing it. Because they just take the case and assume the bow's in it. And they have the box for like an entire episode without realizing that it's empty.
How do you not check?
Like, they have it for like an entire week. And they're just like, I have the bow. Do you?
Idiots. Nazis are idiots. I'm taking a hard stance right now.
Wow. Way to get political.
But as the Doctor stills the bow and runs to the TARDIS, one of the gold-tip arrows almost hits him and embeds in the TARDIS door. That'll be important at the very end of the serial. And they TARDIS out with the arrow still stuck in it. But the Cybermen take the statue and begin trying to cut out the statue from the comet. And and it's at this point that the Doctor and Ace go back to 1638 again, but the mathematician is gone now, and the chess game has advanced, and the Doctor makes another move and they leave. And they have some, exposition-y dialogue. I don't know why the mathematician is gone.
Yeah, because I think the fire's still going on in the fireplace.
I'm not sure what happened.
They only paid him for one episode.
Yeah, that's true. That's probably it right there. I'm not used to the Doctor and his companion traveling this much. They go bounce around from place to place, from time period to time period, a lot in the first 2 episodes of this. And I'm just not. I mean, it's cool. I just didn't. You don't usually see that.
Also, very accurately.
Yes, that's true. He goes exactly where he wants to go.
This season feels very Modern Who in that way of I feel like a lot of what Modern Who winds up doing is a lot of it is sort of set up here, the sort of faster pace. You get the TARDIS traveling around a lot. I feel like this is the beginning of the modern era of Doctor Who in a way.
And you continue to get that for the next season.
I've been enjoying it. I've been enjoying it a lot. And again, it's super nice to have 3 episodes. That's a good pace.
Yeah. Although there are times I'm I could have used a little bit more information on some of this stuff.
And this is also where you're thinking, you have to realize they pulled in Andrew Carmel as the script editor, and he had been the script editor the year before, but he really was using stuff that had already been commissioned. And so you got this Andrew Carmel, I think he's 25. It was super young, maybe younger than that. I don't remember his exact age, but he comes in and has all these ideas, and he's wanting to modernize the show. You've got John Nathan Turner that's kind of done producing, but he also is the only person that cares about the show. So he keeps getting threatened. If you leave, we just cancel it. So you've got all of this happening. And then you've got Andrew Carmel that's young, and he's bringing in new ideas and fresh ideas and new writers. You get younger writers, younger directors. You get a whole new production team. You've got a lot of people that are hired during this time. You got Mike Tucker, who goes on to be a designer on New Who, gets his start in Remembrance of the Daleks, and I think this story, and where they do a lot of the design work. You've got all these guys that are starting out. So I think I say all that to say I think that's why it feels very modern, is they had this young blood that all of a sudden were the only people that wanted to work on it, and the only people they could pay to work on it, that they were willing to pay that amount to work on it. You got Sophie, who's young, and while she's definitely not, she wasn't, we had other young companions, but she came in and she was, everyone got along. Sophie and Sylvester share a birthday.
Aww.
You've got her and Andrew Carmel were super, they had the thing with the vinyl thing, and Sophie kept putting new patches on her coat, and they kept telling her to stop because of continuity. So there's all this stuff, and I think you get this Modern Who because you have this young blood that's fresh out of school, fresh out of writing school and doing all this, and you've got this really cool situation with all these people that are really anxious to write, and they need their first jobs. And that's what this was. People that were writing in a modern way and weren't stuck to this traditional way of writing, and were willing to break some traditions.
Yeah, and it needed to be reinvigorated, especially after, Trial of a Time Lord. It's just a big clunky mess. I do think this season has been a huge improvement over the Sixth Doctor era specifically, but I think the Sixth Doctor era did it no favors and lost a lot of audience. So I think people just stopped paying attention and didn't realize the show had gotten good again.
Yeah, that could be.
But back in the story, the Doctor tells Ace that the Validium, the living metal, was made by Omega and Rassilon, and
name dropping
somebody else maybe. He sent it into space. It is basically the hand of Omega, but different. It's just a Time Lord weapon that he got rid of and now is getting it back. But he says that the bow will lead him to where the rest of the statue is, because it glows when it gets close to things.
I don't understand if he's relaunching this thing into space every 25 years.
No, he's not relaunching it. It just goes into orbit every 25 years. It gets close. And affects people.
So it's not. This is the first time that it's landed.
Yeah.
Second time. The first time was in 17 whatever when Lady Painford had it turned into a statue of her.
Yeah, 1638.
Or 1638, yeah.
It was just getting close every 25 years.
Yeah.
I was landing, and I was like, why doesn't he just fix it?
No, it's going into orbit and then causing people to get weird.
And I guess the idea is in 300 years, it will come back around. Or however many, 400, whatever.
There's some math and logic here.
It just seems like there's got to be a better way.
You'd think. Just destroy it or put it in a box.
Just send it into the sun.
Speaking of things that don't make sense, I feel like this next scene is a joke that I don't understand. Lady Painfort and Richard are mugged by these two street guys who are call Lady Painfort and Richard social workers. And I don't know what that joke means. I'm sure it's a joke. I don't get it.
I think this might be like an English joke, like a London joke. That's all I can think. Yeah, I don't know the actual joke. I mean, other than I think the idea that they're dressed a certain way. So they're like, oh, they must be like, these guys are just uneducated. So they think that anyone that is dressed nice must be, or dressed funny or whatever, must be social workers. I don't know.
It's a bizarre scene. That makes sense. It's weird, but I guess that makes sense.
I think it's setting up the joke that comes at the end of this, and which is kind of a funny line. When the doctor and the ace find them and ask them who did this to them, and they said it was social workers, and that is a funny line. It's an awful setup, but it's a funny line.
Because the Lady Painfort and Richard hang them upside down from a tree and burn their clothes.
Which just seems extra mean. Like, that took so much time to do.
Well, and also, you gotta think, like, did Richard do that? Did Richard, like, manhandle both of those really big guys and tie them up one at a time? Or was Lady Painfort doing it also? Like, that's the thing I want to know. Like, how did that go down? I mean, they said Richard was, like, a really bad guy. Like, he was, like, a murderer and stuff. So, I don't know. Maybe he did do that. Maybe he's, like, the thug of thugs.
This is the meanest thing that, well, apart from killing a bunch of pigeons, this is in the beginning. This is when they're introduced. This is the meanest thing. Well, yeah, and killing the mathematician. But once they get to this time period, this is the meanest thing that we see them do.
Other than all the murders.
Taking out a couple of skinheads, which probably, their skinheads is like, is only just a couple of ranches above Nazis, right? So.
I've got in my notes here the Shakespeare line. The bear will not pursue us. Such things happen only in the theater. Because that's where they go to next is they go to her grave. Well, actually, they go to Richard's grave first, which has been turned into a safari park. And there's llamas on it. Because why not?
Windsor has a park of animals. Like, they have a kind of...
Oh, it does?
Yeah. On the grounds of Windsor is a sort of... It's not really safari, but it's kind of they call it, I think, the Great Park.
Ah.
It is called the Safari Park in the episode.
Because your royals like to be surrounded by really cool exotic animals. So, like llamas. I think those are llamas, right?
Yeah, they're llamas. At least that's what the TARDIS wiki says.
Okay. I love that they're in the TARDIS wiki. Man, that is...
The TARDIS wiki has a page for literally everything.
I was going to say, if anyone knows the difference between llamas and alpacas, it's the
TARDIS wiki.
I have to remember that.
They have like a page for like apple and teeth. Just anything that there can be a page for, there's a TARDIS wiki page for.
Wait a minute, though. This is where I get really confused, because the Silver Nemesis statue seems to be moving around at will. Like, it's like the Nazis got it to some sort of warehouse, and the next thing I know, it's like in the wall of this tomb, and then it's in the tomb itself, right? Like, it just keeps moving.
I think, I could be wrong. I don't think the Nazis got it. I think the Cybermen got it.
Oh, that's right. You're right. The Cybermen got it. You're right.
They took it to her grave. I think they hid it there.
Oh, no, this is their plan.
To
drive her crazy.
Yeah.
Because she's gonna, be confronted with her own death. That is their plan. They put it in her tomb to confront her with her own mortality.
Because they know she has it, and she has the arrow which will lead her to the statue. Yeah. Got it.
And instead she gets there and she's like, oh, they put it in my grave.
My grave is empty. My grave is empty. My bones are not here, which freaks Richard out. And she's like, I would definitely escape death.
Oh yeah, I live forever. Don't worry about that.
It literally says death is but a door.
I mean, was that explicitly said? So I've been watching this for like 20 whatever years, and like, I've never figured that out. Like, whoa, how did that happen? Where was that jump? I've never noticed that the Cybermen, is that explicitly said?
I don't know if it's like 100% explicitly said. Parts of it definitely are. They definitely know that Lady Painfort is there and has the arrow. They definitely say something about like her going mad, and like I think that is like part of their plan.
Once they hear her screaming, because she's like, where is it? Where is it? And she's like, is this the condition known as madness? I love the emotion of 80s Cybermen. It's just, you know what I think it is? I think it's excellent.
That's a good voice too. It's so good.
David Banks.
But I do think because they have those pieces, they know she's there. They need the arrow. So they put the statue in her grave to lead her there so she'll go crazy and then give them the arrow. And also trap her because it's it's an enclosed area that they can easily fortify, I guess.
How cumbersome was it for the Cybermen to walk around those halls with the statue, like just hanging out? You know, they're like, I mean, they're kind of like movers.
Did no one notice these giant robot guys just desecrating a grave?
I mean, I guess that's kind of their thing, right? Especially if we look at newer Who. They have no problems dealing like grave robbing.
Right.
I'm kind of surprised they didn't take her bones and be like, oh, by the way, just turn her into a Cyberman.
The thing is, I don't think she has bones.
That's the thing. We don't know if she was ever in there. Like, we don't know if they took her out to put the Nemesis statue in, or if there was anything in there to take out.
The end would tell us that there would not be, right? I mean, unless we're actually time is changing through this story, which, you know what, it's Doctor Who, it could.
Timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly.
Exactly.
But yeah, the Cybermen trap them in there, but Richard shoots them with their remaining gold arrows, and then gets a couple of them. Meanwhile, also the Cybermen's transmissions have been jammed by the Doctor playing jazz on that tape deck, which like screws up their communications, which is a great scene where I just love it when I think one of the cyber leaders talking to the other Cybermen is like, why aren't we not communicating with our ships or whatever? And they just flip their like communicators on and you just hear just jazz. And it's a beautiful scene.
Jammed by jazz.
While all this is happening, the Doctor and Ace blow up the Cyberman ship, which that's the scene where the Doctor's like, hey, you don't have that Nitro 9, right? And she's like, no, I don't. And he's like, cool, don't go blow up that ship. Like this, I feel like this is the most proactive the Doctor has ever been in like just blowing shit up.
Just really fucking some shit right up.
Like I said, I haven't seen like a lot of episodes here, so a lot of story here. But I remembered this dialogue, the same dialogue between the two of them in Remembrance of the Daleks. Do they do it often besides just these two times?
I mean, I think there is a sort of ongoing thing about like the Nitro 9 and whether or not she has brought it, and like you didn't bring it, right? And she's like, no, but then she always does.
Yeah.
It comes back up in another episode in a few episodes from now as well, at least one.
But we were talking about similarities between this and the Dalek, and that's one that really hit me in the face. And I was like, it's the exact same scene, like it's the exact same thing that they're doing.
Though the Doctor does make sure to get those like cyber dudes out of there because he's like, hello, I'm the Doctor, I believe you want to kill me, and then runs away, which is another great line. There's some really good jokes in this serial, but they do blow up the ship. But because they blow up the ship, the Cybermen are like, we have been betrayed, and kill the cyber dudes, and that makes Ace very sad, and she's like, they did that just because I blew up their ship? The Doctor's like, yeah, they're Cybermen. And then she's like, well, I guess they really didn't want to save me. Meanwhile, DeFlores makes an alliance with the Cybermen, and he's like, we're gonna be buds. We're gonna work together. You guys can't kill Painfort and Richard because they have gold. They have some sort of weapon. I don't think he says gold because he doesn't want to tip that he knows gold is the Cybermen's weakness, which he does know somehow. But he's like, we can take care of Painfort and Richard because their weapons don't hurt us like they do you. And if we'll take over the world and, we'll split up slave groups, it'll be great. And then They leave, and both in separate scenes basically have dialogue where they're like, yeah, we're going to betray them. We're going to definitely do a double cross.
That's what happens when bad guys team up.
Richard and Painfort, they find the statue in the crypt. They're surrounded, and she's like freaking out, and he's like, we gotta leave, we gotta go, and she doesn't want to because she wants the statue, but he takes her arrow, throws it in with the statue, and runs out with her before they can be murdered by Nazis and Cybermen. And then DeFlores goes in there and is like, wah ha ha, we have the statue, screw you Cybermen, we have the power. And then the Cybermen's like, do you? And they open their little bow case, and they're like, only joking. I think there's a little bit of a miscommunication here. We're still buds. Meanwhile, the Doctor's like, there's got to be more ships, and I don't know where they are. I've been looking at the tape deck, and there's nothing there out in space. But then he sees a little chameleon on a tree log, and he's like, oh, that's it. And then adjusts some dials and finds out that all of these cyber ships have been shrouded.
There's no reason for this scene to be shot as adorably as it is.
Yeah.
Like, it just seems they're just hanging out in the woods having a very chill time.
Yeah, there's like a fallen tree that they're sitting on. And that's definitely got to be like, they just found a tree and we're like, we got to film something here. It looks great. But that's the end of episode 2. There's thousands of cyber warships in space.
Dun, dun, dun.
We're now into episode 3, which I have called Southern Roots. Because the most bonkers, bizarre scene.
As you should.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the Doctor decides to take the bow to the statue, and Ace is very worried, but she'll go with him. They actually do this scene twice, where she's like, I'm very worried. And he's like, do you want to go back to the TARDIS? And she's like, no. And it's adorable, but it does happen twice. Back in the crypt, yes, DeFlores does try to backpedal, then throws gold dust in the cyber leader's face and, like, runs out. But his second in command, Carl, betrays him and is like, I'm giving you up to the Cybermen because they're clearly better. A lot of double crosses on top of double crosses.
Can't trust Nazis. Who knew?
Or Cybermen.
Well,
Same diff.
I will say that, yes, and it is mentioned by the Cyberman leader, but his little, like, number 2 guy is really lippy for a Cyberman. Like, he's questioning him all throughout this story. Every time the Cyberman it seems like he gives an order, the other, he says, like, are you sure this is a good idea? But what about this? And I'm like, dude, I don't know who you were in a human in real life, but man, you were not converted all the way.
Speaking of, like, people and their, like, sidekicks, I guess. I'd really like to see Painfort is, like, kind of touched by Richard saving her. Like, she's annoyed that, like, they've left the statue. But she's like, why do you take care of me so much? I've been really bad. He's like, you know, you're Lady Painfort and I'm your servant or whatever. I gotta take care of you. But she says, you're a good man, Richard. And I am evil.
I am evil.
She says it so distantly, too.
Oh, I know you're less hip on it, Mike, but I love this goofy-ass performance.
I don't mind the performance, and I don't... If there was a method to her madness, or if there was something behind it, where she just appeared to be mad to everybody, but she really had a scheme, I'd feel much better about it. Instead of just having her descend into... I mean, by the end, she's hardly coherent.
Her final act of madness is something that's a bit much for me and doesn't entirely make sense. So I feel you on that. But some of it I enjoy. I enjoy just her delighting in being evil.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, embrace it.
The Doctor and Ace are running to deliver the arrow, and the tape stops, so the jazz stops, so the Cybermen can't communicate. And there's some joke about, like, the Doctor has the arrow and stuff, and like, well, it's not like he's just gonna, like, walk in here, and then he walks in there with the arrow. Yeah. And then him and Ace basically play chess with it. They're, like, throwing it around each other and just sort of, like, basketball, tossing it around. And they basically awaken the statue with it and then leave, and the statue follows them. That's the gist of it. The Doctor and Ace go back to the past, take the mathematician's notes, finish the chess game, check, and grab some gold coins and go back to the future. No copyright infringement intended. And then the greatest scene happens. My favorite line, my favorite shot. I think it's amazing. Richard is hitchhiking, or trying to hitchhike, trying to wave down a car, while Painfort is just on the side of the road, sitting on some sort of, like, bus bench or something. I'm pretty sure her legs are just swinging, and she's by herself, and she just goes, all will be mine.
It's such a bonkers scene that it made me laugh really hard.
She says it so seriously to herself.
I think what amuses me so much about this is, like, have you ever just gotten wrapped up in your own shit? Sometimes you just get really wrapped up in your own shit.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't even realize that you're sitting alone at a bus stop.
While this guy is trying to hitchhike.
Talking about how the world's gonna be yours.
And then she gets up and stands in front of a limo that's coming and gets picked up by
the best character in Doctor Who history.
First of all, the way that they get picked up was hilarious, and I almost thought they were going to do like a It Happened One Night reference where you've got, I think it's Clark Gable and Claudette Colbert, and they're together, and they're trying to get a ride, and he's sticking his thumb out, and nobody's pulling over, and then she goes up, and she just shows like a little bit of leg, and then the car stops. I thought they were going to do that with this, and I'm like, wow. But instead, she just got in front of the car. And I'm like, that's probably for the best.
This woman, her character's name is Remington. I don't know her real name. When they cast her, I think they picked her up in the limo that's in the scene. That's how they picked her up. And they got to set, and I think she brought her own, like, wardrobe. And then she was like, well, where is it? She's like, is it in the trunk? And then he's like, what? She had just left her luggage at the airport on the side of the road because she assumed someone would pick it up. Or maybe not the airport, at the hotel somewhere, but she just left it on the, like, sidewalk at the street.
No.
So they got, like, some, like, crew member to just, like, run out there very quickly, and luckily nobody had touched it. It was just sitting out there, and she just assumed someone would pick it up for her. The limo driver. But the limo driver was not, like, really, like, a limo driver. It was someone from the crew. It wasn't, like, his job. But she's amazing. We'll talk more about her in a sec as I get to her in my notes. Then it turns out that the double cross that Carl did was another double cross because he's actually
a double
cross, and he frees DeFlores and they get out. And then the Doctor has set up in a giant hangar somewhere with the Comet. The statue follows them in there, and he gives the statue the bow and starts working on the ship that is the Comet. Okay, so back to the limousine. There's so much good dialogue in here. She asks if they're students, and he's like, I am a servant. I neither read nor write. And she says she's just come from London. And he's like, 2 days travel? She's like, no, 40 minutes, because I like to take things slow. And that she's there looking into her roots. And he's like, that it is a good time for crops.
Her reaction to that, too, is like, it throws her, but not for long.
Nothing that is said to her throws her for very long. She just accepts it and goes, these people are adorable and I love them.
It seems like you've got 3 people here that are having conversations that none of the other ones are participating in.
Okay, that is what makes this scene so good. These are 3 characters who are so wrapped up in their own shit that they barely can tell that they're existing in the same space. And it's magnificent.
I love it so much.
By the way, it should be pointed out that Lady Remington is played by Dolores Gray, who's an American actress. It's not an English person not an English actor trying to do a Southern accent or anything. But she had a great career in classic Hollywood. Like, she was in It's Always Fair Weather with Gene Kelly, and she was in like a ton of other stuff, and this was unfortunately the last thing she did as well. She lasted till 2002, but this was the last time she had acted.
What a great role to go out on.
I don't know if she thought so, but
oh man, on the documentary, Sophie Aldred was being a little rude, maybe, talking about like just they pancaked her in makeup and like was taping her face up to get rid of wrinkles.
No.
And hiding it under her wig. Maybe that's not a story you should be sharing.
That's actually kind of messed up and not that funny.
I mean, she wasn't sharing it like it was a funny story. That's the thing. She was just sharing it like, here's an anecdote. Here's a thing that happened. There was like no judgment there. But she was like, it was weird. But she also, like, there's also a thing about, like, she says, like, you know, her name is Remington. And Painfort's like, I know the Remingtons. They're thieves and swindlers.
All. Thieves and swindlers all.
I'm like, oh, finally, they're connecting.
Yeah, because, like, she's immediately like, oh, you've been studying my family history.
Takes
Wonderful.
no offense to this whatsoever.
Well, and then she's like, she says, Dorothea Remington stole my cook. So I poisoned her. And she's like, oh, there was a Dorothea. And she was poisoned.
Yeah, like, I think she gives the exact date she died. Oh, it's so good. I love this. This has nothing to do with the cereal, but I love
It's
it.
the best part of the cereal.
This is actually, and I'm wondering if this is intentional. The part you guys were talking about the bus stop where she's just talking to herself. This is the part as I watch it now. Like I've said, I've watched this one many times, but as I watch this now, this is the part where I realized she is going through some kind of mental trauma.
She's broken. She realizes that all her plans are probably not going to happen. And so she's going through the motions here. She's trying to kid herself, but she pretty much knows the battle's over. To continue with the metaphor, she's playing a chess game, but she knows it's a losing strategy.
Or she's just convinced herself that she is going to win, even though that's not going to happen.
I don't think so. She doesn't seem to have a set plan or even a lot of enthusiasm. She's just kind of vegged out. She kind of tuned out.
I don't feel like she's tuned out. She does kind of bit in that scene where she tells Richard that she's evil. Because to me, it feels like she's more just like singularly focused and ignoring everything else. She's like, I'm going to win this, and is ignoring literally everything else.
Right, and I think she's in her head, right? Like she's in her own head in a way that, like, she is going through. It is the only thing she's manic. It's the only thing she can think about. The only thing in her head is that she has to get the statue, and she has to. All things will be hers, and the statue will solve all my problems. The statue will make me the most important person in the universe. In that way, she is very, I want to say egocentric, but more than that, narcissist. She's got these tendencies where the only thing she can think about is herself. And I think all these years I've watched this, and I've never really paid attention to it's almost brilliant. Like, as I'm watching it, I'm like, they actually did do a really good job characterizing her. But they're doing it in a way I just never paid attention to. You think, oh, well, she's a camp villain, right? It's, oh, all things will be mine, blah, blah, blah. But it almost feels like there's some mental trauma going on. And she's actually going through something. And I've never really caught on to that before. And maybe I'm reading too far into it, but I never really had looked into it until this. And I was just like, oh, yeah, maybe there's something more to it.
Well, I think you're right. She does. I mean, there's a line where Richard's like, what are we going to do? Like, we have no more weapons. And she's like, we have one weapon left, and it's my, like, my intelligence, my knowledge, my brain. Like, my brain is going to take us through where we need to be. And yeah, whether or not it's stable or not.
I have never been that confident in my own abilities in my life.
So all she's got is what's in her noggin.
It does not pay off for her. Spoilers. The doctor is programming the rocket, and Ace talks to the statue, so the statue can talk, as we learn here in the latter half of the final episode. And it just basically says that...
It talks about how hot it is. It's like, I am very beautiful, aren't I?
I've had many forms, and all of them just solid 10s.
No, that's not what she says. She says, I've had other forms that would horrify you. So she admits that she's been like, this is a good look for her. She's having a good hair day.
And Ace is kind of like, oh, cool. And then walks away.
It's a kind of a cool scene between them, though. Yeah, it is kind of funny. She's like, catch you later. Like, I'm out.
I will say that the statue, in a way, is kind of horrifying.
Yeah.
And the way in that making of video I referenced earlier, they like the actress talks about how they had to black out her teeth for this. Like, all the makeup is just that's under the mask, rather, was just really harsh makeup, and it is horrifying in a way. It's got this gold, the shine to it and everything's really
ethereal,
stark. Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's not silver.
No, it's not silver.
But it is cool looking. It's a cool effect, Doctor Who, especially, throughout classic Who or whatever, gets ragged on for the effects sometimes. And there are some effects on this that are better than others. But I did think that the effect with the Nemesis was pretty well done.
And it was all in the paint that they used, which is pretty interesting. It was a reflective paint. And they did the same thing with the bow earlier in I guess, episode 2, where it's they're walking and the bow's reflecting. They do that with just like lights around the camera. Like it went around the lens and it pulsated, and it would pulsate and it just reflected on that bow as far as it would go out.
Oh.
I don't know if they did the same thing with the statue, but the pulsing bow was a pretty cool effect, and they talk about it in depth and strange detail. They're like, see, if you get too close to the camera, it'll make you glow too. But if you get away and we just have it focused on that bow, it'll just make it glow. It was technical, but the practical effects in this are fantastic.
I kind of just assumed there was some lights inside the bow or something, but that sounds interesting.
No, it was reflective paint and lights around the camera lens.
That is cool. I think they do the same thing with the arrow.
Yeah, I'm sure they do.
It does look really cool.
I think they did a similar effect in, was it the Green Death, when they've got that, like, stuff on them, on their face, the, like, plague or whatever. But the Cybermen show up, and Ace starts shooting gold coins at them. It's just a good, I guess, action scene. They go up on a catwalk.
Oh, the catwalk is terrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She was afraid of heights.
Ugh.
Nuh-uh.
Yeah.
That's so
That
mean.
sucks for her.
She's like, I was actually fine. She's like, I don't know if I was just like so in character that I didn't pay attention to it. But she's like, but it did creak a lot, and that was scary.
You have used being in character to stop being afraid of heights before.
It's true, I did.
There must be something to that.
It does help. We went to a place called the City Museum in St. Louis, and they have like, was it a 10-story slide? Mm-hmm. And I was like, sure, I'll do it. And then I got halfway up, like in the middle of the line, and I'm like, oh no, I've messed up. This is way too high.
You had no idea what a story was, did you?
This podcast is just exposing how stupid I am.
Oh.
I can't translate measurements, stories or inches or feet. I can't really translate that into the real world very well. I don't know what that looks like. So it was way higher than I thought. And so I just pretended to be a character I had played in a web series who was just a very confident, cocky douchebag, and just like doing that, being confident. Stop being afraid of heights. I should do that more often because I am terrified of heights.
I am terrified of heights as well. And I did feel it while watching this. I thought it was really effective. And the whole sequence, this is why we love Ace, right? Like, she is very much, has a lot of agency, can take care of herself. And the Doctor knows it, just goes and lets her takes out like all but one Cyberman. It's just like pretty amazing. She can do what the Nazis, the Fourth Reich couldn't do.
Yeah, like she's down to like one coin, and there are 3 Cybermen.
It's an awesome scene.
She does what the Doctor said at the beginning of the serial. She ducks, and 2 of the Cybermen shoot each other, and then she shoots the coin at the Cyber leader.
Yeah. I didn't notice the foreshadowing there. Good call there. I didn't think of the foreshadowing on that. They set that up.
Hey, I just put it together right now.
I'm sure that was a planned setup. Sure it was. Sure.
She was playing with her slingshot during the duck scene at the beginning, so it's probably related. But she does shoot the Cyber leader with the coin, but it doesn't kill him because he gets up later. But it presumably takes care of everybody. But she goes back down. The Doctor is programming the rocket and talking to the statue, and she's basically like, "Am I done yet? Can I be done?" And he's like, "No, you're not done yet. You'll know when you're done." And it's like the most unsettling thing. The Doctor seems sketchy here.
I was gonna say, it is ethically ambiguous what is happening.
Well, what he's doing is not, well, let's just say it's debatable. And it's a decision that he made a couple stories ago with the Daleks, And he's about to do it again because he knows very well that he's going to basically like exterminate an entire race with what he's doing. Whether that's a good thing or bad thing, that's debatable. But, you know, he knows what he's doing, and he doesn't want Ace to know.
And he's using a sentient
gonna
weapon,
say,
which is the same. The hand was too.
That the statue has some kind of sentience and like considers itself to be a prisoner. I mean, it's just unsettling, and it just sits there.
The Hand of Omega was, there's a scene where he says it's kind of alive as well. So he just keeps sending these sentient weapons to wipe out his biggest enemies. But also, the weapon itself is wiped out as well. And it's a living being. It's messed up.
It is messed up.
We gotta cancel the Doctor. He set up the rocket to do a test boost of flame that he uses to get rid of any remaining Cybermen except for the leader. As soon as those Cybermen are taken care of, DeFlores and Carl arrive and are like, we're taking over. And then they get shot by the cyber leader who comes down. He's like, I'm taking over. And then Lady Painfort and Richard show up and they're like, no, we're taking over.
And when she comes through the door, she's still ranting about all will be hers and all of this. She's just like, and that will be mine, and that will be mine, all things.
I'll take everything. This lamp, this dog.
I got that scene from The Jerk in my head now, thanks.
You're welcome. That's exactly what I was referencing. I'm glad you picked that up. But she gets to say the thing. She gets to say Doctor Who. Because she's like, well, who is he actually? I know. I know his secret. And if you give me the bow, I won't tell your secret. And the Doctor's like, all right. And then he gives the bow to the cyber leader. And she's like, what? But I'll give up your secrets. And the cyber leader's like, honestly, I don't care about his secrets.
It's so funny.
The Doctor's like, check. So she completely loses it and jumps into the statue as it takes off. Because the cyber leader is like, tell it to go to my fleet. And then it does. It goes to the cyber fleet, but then it explodes and takes out the fleet of Cybermen. And the cyber leader is like, what? And the Doctor's like, yeah, it works for me, not for you. And then Richard grabs the arrow, the gold-tipped poison arrow, out of the TARDIS door and jams it into the cyber leader. Because he's like, I guess the person I was serving jumped inside of a statue, I guess. I'll help the Doctor out. And the Doctor, to repay him for this act of kindness, is going to take him to the past, back to where he belongs. They all go, and the Doctor and Ace are playing chess. I'm pretty sure Ace is winning, while they discuss how this is exactly like Remembrance of the Daleks. And Richard plays the flute for the Doctor, while Ace asks the same question, which is, who are you, Doctor? Doctor Who? And he just puts his fingers to his lips and goes, shh, and enjoys the music. Which, by the way, the way that the writer came up with this story, he was just like, hey, can I write for Doctor Who? And they're like, we have one spot open. It's the anniversary. And he was like, great. I have a perfect story for that. And they're like, well, come and pitch it. And he lived like 7 minutes away. And on that 7 minutes there, he was like, oh boy, I better come up with an idea. Because he had nothing. He just lied. And then when he got there and they were like, well, what's your idea? He was like, Doctor Who. That's the question. That's the question of the show. Who is the Doctor? Doctor Who. He's God. John Nathan Turner was like, okay, you can do that, but you can't say it. So that was the genesis of this episode, was the Doctor is God, I guess. Which, he certainly acts that way a little bit. But, that's the end of Silver Nemesis. We're gonna take a quick break, and we'll be back for final thoughts.
For the past 12 seasons, Mike and Mike have been bringing you a weekly look at all things geek, with reviews, discussions, interviews, and topicals from across the geekosphere. Now, with Geek Life slowly returning to normal in 2021, join the Earth Station 1 crew as we look at the return of the summer movie season, preview the fall TV lineup, look at all the big conventions now happening, along with other geek topics. You can listen to Earth Station 1 wherever fine podcasts are found, and as always, Earth Station 1 is a founding member of the ESO Network.
And we're back. Tony, do you know what time it is?
It's time for final thoughts.
You said that so fast. You didn't do your whole bit.
Yeah, I'm feeling kind of sick from my COVID booster. I would like to go lay down.
Final thoughts.
this is a good serial if you don't need the plot of something to be good in order to enjoy it. Because I think it's having a lot of fun. Yeah, I think it's having a good time, and if you can enjoy it for that, then it's fun to watch. Plus, it's only 3 episodes long, so when it drags, it doesn't drag that much. I think what's really interesting to me about this story, but also this era, is I really dislike the idea of the Doctor being something big or something more. I don't know if I've said it before on the podcast. Like, this is an idiot with a box. And I think that's fascinating because the more this is one of my favorite seasons so far. I've been thoroughly enjoying this season. And so it's weird that there's like this idea that I'm like, yeah, I don't care for that at all. It's such like a central point in a season that I really enjoy. And I'm curious of like how much of the story is built around that and how much of like my enjoyment's out of just performances. Like, obviously, there's just oodles of chemistry everywhere, and that's really important. I don't know. I'm having like a weird, fascinating time where like this season is doing a lot of things that like I personally don't care for, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it. That's basically my final thoughts. Yeah. Silver Nemesis is Nemesis is.
Gotcha.
Silver Nemesis is fun, and if you want it to be anything more than that, it'll probably be disappointing. But if you just want it to be fun, then you'll have a good time.
Mike, what are your final thoughts?
Well, my final thoughts on seeing Silver Nemesis, overall, I enjoyed it quite a bit. I really liked the setup, the first act, the idea of the Doctor going against Nazis. The Fourth Reich is kind of fun. The Cybermen are the Cybermen. They can be fun or not, and I think this is a decent story with them. It's not really like about them. They're really just kind of just another adversary. But I really like the introduction of and the possibilities of Lady Painfort. I feel like that was an opportunity that unfortunately in the third act doesn't really result in much, but I really like the idea of having this 17th century sorceress having a history with the Doctor and what that resulted to, and that this was their final sort of battle. I really liked. The story itself, I mean, it's fun. It's funny that Jazz plays so much into it because it's kind of Jazz-like in the sense that there's no real like strong story structure. It just kind of goes where it wants to go. But the chemistry between Sylvester and Sophie is amazing. Once again, it's a very strong Ace episode. She's got a lot of agency. She's not a companion that's just going to sit there and get captured and yell or whatever. I mean, she's great. This is a great Sylvester story as well. And I like the acting of pretty much of the bad guys too. Like, I thought they were all well cast. There's some interesting dynamics that happen, and I liked it overall. I have a little bit of problems with the third act, as I mentioned, but it was fun, and it went by fast. It didn't feel like none of it felt padded to me, so that was good.
I'll go third and leave the experienced one for last. I enjoyed this. It's definitely not my favorite of this season. It definitely is very reminiscent of Remembrance of the Daleks, which I think is a better story. But I do think this one is funnier. So I do think this one is very humorous, and I really enjoy all the jokes. I love all of the performances. Lady Painfort and Richard specifically, and Sylvester McCoy and Sophie Aldred are very good as the Doctor and Ace. I do like what you said about it feeling like Jazz, because it does. It just kind of happens. But there's a good pace to it. It's very quick. It's very fast paced. I believe our friend Christine Sherry said that this is the same serial as Remembrance of the Daleks, except that it's played as a farce, and I agree with that. It's a lot of running around and making jokes, and I enjoyed that aspect of it. That's probably the strongest aspect of this serial to me is the humor. That's why I like it. I mean, there's other good stuff going on too, but that's its strongest point, I think, is the jokes. So yeah, Ashley, what are your final thoughts?
Yeah, it's been really good to look back at this. I've not looked at it in a few years. So one thing that I do like about Doctor Who is this mystery, this idea that the Doctor may be something more than he is, within reason. I don't know if I like where the new series have taken it as much, but this idea of the Carmel Master Plan, I think is fascinating, and it really plays out here. It really shines here. It shines in this whole season. This is when Carmel was really at his height, playing with mystery and intrigue of this where they would put an idea in and they would be kind of like, did I miss that? Was there an episode where that was brought up? No? Oh, okay. So they would just start putting these pieces of history into Doctor Who that hadn't existed before. And they started telling this, there was a master plan. There was a long story that was going to play out over several seasons, and we didn't get to see that. But I think what I do notice watching this again now through a different view eye is you're right. There are several plot holes in this that I had never picked up on. It's almost as if it was going to be a four episode story, and they wanted to cut it. They needed to cut things out. And so there are elements of plot that are just missing from this story. That said, I really do like Lady Painfort. You've got the mystery of who she is to the Doctor, and like I said, there's at least some fiction that has been written that I think is fascinating. In a way, the idea of Lady Painfort and Richard is kind of this mirror image, or I guess bizarro image of the Doctor and Ace, right? Where she's traveling through time with her companion, and so is the Doctor, and you've got this almost fight that way. You've got a lot of villains in this that I don't know if we needed all of that. I feel like you could have cut one of them out and had a much better story. That said, it's still super fun. It's always great to see the Cybermen, and it's great to see how all of it plays out. It's just a fun story. Like I said, I've always liked it. I saw it first run, and it is a story that I have watched over and over and over and over. And it is great to watch it again through a slightly different lens. And you do pick up things. I've picked up things watching it this time that I've never picked up before. So it's been great to watch it again.
That's our thoughts on Silver Nemesis. Before we go, is there anything you would like to plug, Ashley?
No, not specifically. If you are interested in the new adventure books, you can still find the Oncoming Storm podcast out there if you want to take a listen to that. Beyond that, I'm not doing a ton. I'm working on a role-playing game right now, which I think I have been for the last 2 or 3 times I've been on, called the Gun Belt. That will be hopefully kickstarting this year. That is the plan. So will be, if you like dinosaurs and cowboys and robots, that might be the role-playing game for you. And it hopefully will be kickstarting this year. Keep an eye out for that.
Awesome. And Mike, how about you?
Thank you so much for the invitation. It's always fun joining you guys on this part of the station, so to speak. And you can find me every week on Earth Station 1, every other week on Earth Station Who. We just started up the Dragon Con report, which is going to air monthly. We'll release episodes of that monthly, leading up to, of course, the big event in Labor Day weekend in September. And of course, if you want to find out about my writing step projects, you can just go to newlegendmike.com.
Awesome. As for us, if you liked this episode, you can check out more on watch-a-rassilon.com. You can also find our podcast, our Patreon, our Amazon wishlist, and more at linktree/watchathon. That's linktr.ee/watchathon. And I want to say special thanks again to Bisexual Brigadier for sponsoring this episode.
Hey, thanks.
And you can check them out at bisexualbrigadier.tumblr.com. And I also want to say, again, special thanks to Vincent E.L. for providing us with our amazing theme song.
Thank you, Vince.
Check out more of their music at vincentel.bandcamp.com. And tune in next time when we talk about the greatest show in the galaxy, with returning guests Christine Cherry and sort of first-time guest Hallie Larson. She was on a bonus episode one time. But until next time, keep calm and wrestle on.
Goodbye, and I love you in a platonic, parasocial way.
And make sure your pets are spayed or neutered.
We'll see you soon.
But you're a good man, Richard. And I am evil. All will be mine.
This has been a broadcast of the ESO Network. Be part of the crew and help support our shows by donating to our ESO Patreon or by shopping at the TeePublic store, which can all be found at www.esonetwork.com. The ESO Network, your station for all things geek.